Hey guys, it's Alex and you're watching Living Steps. Now, recently I've started teaching some traditional set dances to the kids at Aaron's Fiddle, and as I was showing them Priest in His Boots, which was the first dance that we were learning, I told them to pay attention to the weight shifts and to stay conscious of which foot they're landing on, because as long as they're aware of that, the step kind of dances itself, so they won't have to think about it. And their usual teacher, because normally they work on modern step dancing, so she said that that was kind of funny because she was always telling them to be mindful of steps and to think about them so that they can execute them correctly. And of course, that really depends on which phase you're in working on the steps, so neither of those is particularly wrong, but it did get me thinking. And to start off, I guess I'm gonna ask you, how do you feel about it, and what do you usually do? Do you think about the steps when you're performing? Do you think about your technique? Do you focus on the music? Let me know in the comments. I'm really curious to see, how different people approach that. As far as Sean-Nós goes, of course, the end goal is to improvise and to kind of figure steps out on the go. And the way I think about it, I really feel that there's no such thing as steps and you shouldn't worry about it. Now, if Sean-Nós was scary to you before, I guess saying that makes it sound scarier, but I'll clarify. Today I want to tell you about my approach to improvising Sean-Nós, and hopefully that'll give you some new ideas and inspirations. And today I'm probably just gonna talk about the approach overall. I'm not really gonna give you any real examples of it, but I am working on a couple of videos that will give you a clearer demo on how I actually do it. But today I just wanted to give you like a bird's eye view on what the thinking behind it is and to explain that. So, to start off, it comes from a couple of different things outside of dancing that I was doing. A good part of it, I believe, comes from working with Plavo Pozorište in contemporary theater. They use improvisation in the way they develop their materials a lot, so that gave me some ideas. Also, I remember vividly watching this Miles Davis concert and my dad pointing out that, Miles Davis was walking around the stage, quote unquote, looking for ideas. He would approach each individual musician, watch them solo, and kind of, accompany them, but also he was conducting them, giving them direction on, whether he found the idea interesting, whether he wanted to develop it further. He would control who would play for how long, things of that nature. So that was an interesting seed as well. And finally, a lot of my approach to that really came from watching this lecture that John Cleese from Monty Python fame did on creativity and the way he was writing, and he was analyzing it with some psychologists as well and looking at some findings over there. And that's really a great lecture that you should see regardless. And you have that on my Ideas and Inspirations playlist, but I'm gonna link it up here as well so that you can take a look later. And for now, we're just gonna take a couple of ideas from that and try to develop them. Basically, what Cleese says is that to work on creative production, you need to be in something that they call open mode. Meaning that you should take your craft, i.e. dancing in our situation, and sort of just play around with it for play's sake for a period of time. And the notion is that with that kind of approach, you can come up with some different and creative solutions that you might not come up with otherwise. And the way we applied it in our Sean-Nós training back when I was teaching actively was that, when we would gather around in the studio, we might take like a tune and put that on loop, or we might make a playlist and put that on loop, depending on the situation. And what we would do is we would walk around the studio and kind of look for steps, similar to what Miles was doing. We might do just some walking steps, we might take a particular step that we learned and just repeat it, and then, after a couple of cycles, something in your brain gets bored and tired, and then you start experimenting and looking for new things. And I do say experiment. For me, it was never really a training session. I was looking at it more like lab work, just coming in there to do your research. Coming into the studio and just playing around with the tune, looking for some phrases and some combinations that might accompany it in an interesting way. If you find this interesting and inspirational, then please like the video so that it can reach more people. If you want to try something like this, I should warn you, and Cleese mentions this as well, that usually, especially if you're not used to it, the first part of that is very frustrating and unproductive, because it takes some time for your critical brain to disengage. And it's very important for us to do that, because if we're experimenting, if we're playing with steps just for playing sake, then we need to be in a mode where we don't look at it as right or wrong. We need to get in a space where we lose the concept of a mistake. So, the idea is that as you're doing that, you're not really judging or analyzing the steps you're coming up with or experimenting with. The idea is that you're just playing around with them. And so for that to be useful, it's usually a good idea to record this, because if you try thinking about it as you're doing it, you'll get in your own way. So having a recording definitely helps, and even more importantly, you actually need to go back and look at that recording, which is what none of us do, right? But still, that's what you should do. And from that, when you're reviewing your recording, you'll see that, some of the stuff you came up with was probably offbeat. Some of those ideas weren't particularly good or useful, but then some of the other ones will be interesting and creative, and those are the ones that you will want to kind of keep and maybe make note of, or however you want to do it. For me, I was always kind of focused on getting my brain out of the way and trying to teach my feet to think on their own, so that when I come into a session, I don't have to focus on my steps. They would just come out. And my focus instead would be on the tune or the musicians and the way they're playing. Which brings us to two other important points that you've probably heard before. One, you should know your tunes. The more tunes you know, it will be easier to accompany them because you will have some ideas that you've already experimented with. But also, when you hear a new tune or one that you don't know, if you've heard enough of the other ones, you will develop an instinct where you can kind of predict where it might go or how it might end or where the accents might be. And the same goes for knowing the musicians you're working with. And especially, if you have regular sessions like weekly or however often they may be, I would advise you to pay attention to your musician friends and to kind of analyze the way they're accenting and embellishing the tunes. And from that, again, as you're working and dancing with them, over time you will be able to predict where different embellishments and accents might happen, and again, that will be informative and useful for your steps. In summary, for me, I think that the end goal is really to find a way to stop thinking about steps so that we can use our analytical brains for something more useful. And I think it will give you more room to do something expressive and different every time, because you're not really consciously thinking about it. You're letting your feet do the work, which I think is the better approach. So I think that's it for today. As I said, I will have more videos soon where I'll give you some examples of how I actually execute this and how you might want to go into this if you like this approach. And if you enjoyed the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and I'll talk to you soon.